afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. We are delighted to have one of our partners with us, AvidXchange, and Natalia Harris will be presenting on 5 ways accounts payable departments can help offset recession impacts. And as a reminder, we are recording this webinar and we will post it to our on-demand webinar library for you to review again or share with anyone. And you can find our library under our resources tab on our website at innovia.com. And we do encourage you to ask questions during our presentation, so please feel free to type them into the questions box and we will answer them at the end of our session. So now I'm going to turn it over to Natalia to kick off our presentation.
Thank you. I'm Natalia Harris, manager of the Solutions Consulting team at AvidXchange. I've been with AvidXchange for over 6 years now and happy to go through this presentation with you all. Our agenda today will be focusing on looming economic challenges, the state of play for accounts payable, 5 ways AP departments can offset impacts, AP automation with AvidXchange, and then we'll finish up with Q&A. So the looming economic challenges. So to understand how businesses are preparing for a potential recession, we surveyed 500 finance professionals at middle market companies in August of this year. And so 88% of respondents are concerned about the current state of the economy. 70% of respondents said their company is adjusting its budget over the next 12 months. And 30% of respondents said that they are preparing for the forecasted recession by reducing or eliminating office space. So the inflation is forcing businesses to spend more money to maintain revenues. The effects of inflation are apparent when dissecting spending captured by AvidXchange's Middle Market Index, abbreviated as MMI. This index measures the growth rate of the middle market economy based on the quarterly spending habits of thousands of businesses in our Avid Paid network. And according to the millions of payments analyzed in the second quarter of 2022, the middle market took its largest leap in spending, both quarterly and year over year, since we developed this AvidXchange Middle Market Index in December of 2017. Retail trade spending is the most obvious indicator of inflation's impact, with double-digit year-over-year growth rates in each of the 5 last quarters, including rates of 18.8% and 17% in Q1 and Q2, respectively. With companies spending so much more on goods and services, they have to make tough spending decisions elsewhere if they hope to maintain growth. So where are businesses refocusing resources? So a third, 34% of survey respondents said their company is decreasing their budget for overhead costs like rent, utilities, office supplies, and then 66% said creating efficiencies is a high priority for their business over the next 12 months. And then 72% said growing their business is a high priority for their business over the next 12 months. So how will companies achieve growth and reduce costs? So based on the results, 30% of the survey respondents said that they are preparing for the forecasted recession by investing in technology to increase business efficiencies. 30% said of digital transformation projects, their company is prioritizing adopting automation technologies to streamline their internal processes. And 40% said their business is increasing its budget for technology over the next year, more than sales, which is 39%, more than human resources, 26%, or marketing, 20%. So the real opportunity within inflation and the economic uncertainty, according to the NCMM, the National Center for Middle Market, an equal number of firms say inflation has had a positive impact of 39%, as those who cited an overall negative impact of 39%. It simply came down to a survive versus thrive mindset around price hikes and wage increases. So while some are saying inflation, which is bad for our business, has forced us to raise prices because we must pay employees more and maintain revenue, how do we cope? Or others are saying inflation, which impacts everyone, allows us to raise prices, pay higher wages, provide better services, and sustain growth. How do we use this to win? So much like the pandemic accelerated the move to hybrid and remote work models, record inflation caused by supply chain issues is pushing prices to levels businesses imagined would be years away. And much like the businesses who delayed digital transformation in the wake of COVID-19, those fighting the reality of increased costs could struggle to compete with those adapting to circumstances out of their control. Forward-thinking firms who understand the reality we face are indeed raising prices and passing costs to customers, but it's not simply sustained revenues for the sake of sustaining revenue. These companies are still growing profits to pay higher wages and attract and retain top talent in a competitive labor market space. Invest in digital transformation projects that increase efficiency and offset higher labor costs, and also develop higher quality products and services worthy of a higher price. All right, so let's go into this next segment, the state of play, accounts payable, and level of automation. So it's becoming clear that attracting and retaining and growing top talent while navigating the economy uncertainty will require accounts payable professionals to rethink their process. So high staff turnover can contribute to more errors, lower productivity, late payment, missed early payment discounts, and burnout among the staff who remain. So automating the AP process can help organizations do more with less. It can allow accounts payable departments to grow without adding additional headcount to the team. So the more automation an organization has, the more satisfied accounts payable professionals are. And more than 4 times more likely to be extremely satisfied than those that are partially or largely automated processes. So a whopping 0% of those who, with manual processes are extremely satisfied. And the bottom line is the less automated the AP department is, the higher the likelihood that its frontline staff is looking for a new job. So the time spent on manual tasks, repetitive tasks are a central part of how accounts payable professionals currently spend their workday. It's not uncommon for account professional leaders to spend more time each workday on transaction processing than a department planning or staff training, and the other managerial tasks that were hired to perform. So if AP professionals had their way, many manual repetitive tasks would become a thing of the past. So survey respondents said the top 3 manual tasks their organization is likely to eliminate would be, number 1, manually entering data. Number 2, manually routing invoices and payments for approval. And number 3, resolving exceptions. So the modern AP professional, today's AP professional wants more of a work-life balance. 88% of those with fully automated systems work in a hybrid or fully remote situation. So that drops to 79% for largely automated, 73% for partially automated, and like 24% for manual paper-based. And then only 4% are remote. So survey respondents rated remote or hybrid working situations as the second most important factor when considering a new job opportunity, just behind salary and benefits. And 37% are working 2 or more additional hours each day compared to 2020. Additional data shows that during the beginning of COVID 2020, invoice volume fell to 22%. With fewer invoices to process, fewer processors were needed. As a result, a lot of AP teams suffered layoffs. Invoice demands have rebounded. Staffing is proving to be challenging. Everyone is hiring. Entry-level roles are increasingly expensive to fill. As of first quarter of this year, of 2022, invoice volume and invoice size has climbed up now for 5 consecutive quarters. An average, so for 5 consecutive quarters. 5 ways AP departments can help offset recession impacts. So ensuring business continuity. Business continuity remains vital as staff turnover can prove very costly for companies if safeguards aren't in place to keep operations moving. Just because your workforce isn't together in one office doesn't mean your financial operations cannot be centralized. So moving to a digital home for important functions and documents makes it easy for anywhere, anytime access. So no more paper invoices or payments getting lost on someone's desk. And also, according to the Association for Finance Professionals in 2021 Payments Fraud and Control Survey report, number one, nearly 75% of organizations were targets of a payment fraud attack in 2020. Number two, in 2020, checks and wire transfers continue to be a payment method most impacted by fraud activity, 66% and 39% respectively. And then custom automated workflows allow new team members to slot into their approval process with ease and technology, and general helps address and potential tribal knowledge hurdles if a longtime teammate leaves for a new career, retires, etc. So what we're going to do here is we're going to play a quick video of like a real world impact. This is actually a video that one of my solutions consultants on my team has recorded. So her name is Jamie Proctor. I'm going to play the video for the team and then we'll pick back up on our slides here.
When I'm explaining role-based workflows to clients, I always talk about how we set up roles so you can easily take out a person from a role and put a new one in. So for example, in this case, this client, over the course of COVID, so about a year and a half, they had 4 CFOs. So they just kept turning them in. It was crazy. And every single time it happened, they would just panic, obviously. But because they had that role-based workflow, they could easily just put in the new CFO and they would just fall into the workflow where they needed to fall, and they would get the invoices that they needed. And then this also goes back to that service component where I was able to help work with every single new CFO that came in and give them a little bit of a demo and show them what the product does and how they fit in and all of that. So kind of like a mix of the flexibility of a role-based workflow along with our ability to help train those new users as they come in.
So that story, again, illustrates the power of role-based workflows, the flexibility of having a system, a portal to have your approval processes built in. So if there is that turnover, it is very easy to adjust within the system. So we'll walk through a few more slides here. The next one I want to cover is going to be the closely managed costs. Record inflation is enforcing companies, to spend more across the board, including wages and everyday office supplies, and that adds up quickly. So manually entering like the header and line item data from supplier invoices is a task that accounts payable professionals would most like to eliminate from their workday. So keying in invoice data is time consuming, and also, one error can lead to hours wasted in trying to fix an erroneous payment. And according to the Association of Financial Professionals in 2021, Payment and Fraud Control Survey checks continue to be top vehicle for payment fraud. So the first survey points out that 66% of the businesses that were victims of payment frauds were targeted via checks. Relying on checks may be more expensive than we think. Now, analyzing the data to pinpoint savings. So average costs to process an invoice equals total accounts payable cost divided by total number of invoices processed, and you can do this monthly. So add all costs, especially labor, because it's often the highest of all. And don't forget to include the cost for audit fees, lost supplier discounts, mailing and printing, payment mistakes and equipment, etc. So the time to process an invoice, to calculate this number, add the time spent doing the following tasks for one invoice. Number 1, typing in the invoice data. Number 2, reviewing the materials. Number 3, the approvals. Number 4, the payments. Number 5, the reconciling. And number 6, the updates. So the key here is whether you're doing all of this manually or using automation, from a KPI perspective, there's a difference. Business typically spends up to 70% less time using AP automation compared to the manual processes, according to Goldman Sachs. So capturing early payment discounts. So early payment discounts, buyers may receive early payment discounts in exchange for paying a supplier's invoice before the due date. Essentially, a company pays less than the full amount and the supplier receives payment earlier than they typically would. It's a win-win. For suppliers, one advantage to an early payment discount is, of course, they are getting paid earlier. And then, this accelerates their cash flow. Another plus is often when suppliers offer early payment discounts, as we mentioned, and they are rewarded with more business. On the flip side, the purchasing company benefits from early payment discounts if their primary objective is to reduce the cost of goods or improve their relationship with vendors. And improving that vendor management. So a few things here. The buyer must understand the importance of their suppliers, but you must invest the time and money to better those relationships. So I'm going to go in order on a few points here. So number one, you must set forth clear and measurable goals that are ranked ordered for prioritization. Number two, locate the vendors most capable of fulfilling your business written objectives with the most acceptable degree of risk. Number three, the optimal scenario for a contract negotiation is to arrive at mutually agreeable terms and that satisfy both your company's needs and your supplier's needs. Number four, it's often taken for granted that suppliers will perform to those standards of your contracted terms. However, the reality the reality is it's always, so it isn't always so rosy. And number five, relying on a manual system is bound to result in headaches, human error, and plenty of time-consuming legwork. So the right technology is going to help both the buyer, you as the client, and also your vendor, the supplier. By organizing big supply chain data that extends globally, make better use of their data, organizing it and using automated technologies and store it in the cloud, save time, reduce manual work, and avoid frustration and delays. Manage the master vendor files automatically and avoid human errors such as incorrect data entries or duplicate files or duplicate invoices, and solidify their supply chain, each organizational goals and asset performance metrics. So now we're going to go a little high level on what is AP automation with AvidXchange. So who is AvidXchange? So AvidXchange, we actually launched in the year 2000. We have over 1,600 employees, and we have 7 offices across the U.S. We have a foundry office in Charlotte, North Carolina. We have a second foundry office in Sandy, Utah, and then we have offices spread out: New Jersey, Houston, Texas, Alabama, Los Angeles, and I can keep going. So we cover the map here, and we have over 8,000 customers using our tools. We have API integrations with top accounting systems like Microsoft Dynamics GP, 365 Business Central, as well as NetSuite API integrations. We have API integrations with Sage Intacct, Sage 100. So we have API integrations, and I only named a few, but we have an immense integration team here. We can integrate with almost over 300 accounting systems, whether it's an API integration or a file base. And even if it's a new system to us, we'll be able to construct an integration by reviewing the file formatting. So that's the integration overview. So again, we have APIs for these top systems, and we also have file base for others. We have in our AvidPay network, that's the payment services, we have over 825,000 suppliers. So almost 1 million vendors, suppliers in our network today. And this consistently grows every week as we onboard new ones. And this also means over $180 billion is spent under management in 2021 with our AvidPay network. And AvidXchange, we have been recognized as a leading business-to-business payment network in the middle market, by Deloitte, Technology Fast 500, and also Cloud 100 here, as AvidXchange was a 2021 honoree. So the value of automating. So first, visibility and control. You have real-time visibility into invoices and payments, including insight into expense accruals as they occur. So we are going to centralize your invoices in the portal so that you have the visibility to see where invoices are at all times. Whose approval step is it in? Is it AP's first? Is it in the department heads? Next, you're going to have that visibility and control within the system. The next thing is efficiency. Reduce invoice and payment processing times, because you have the system that is receiving the invoices, and then we have a system that's automating the approvals to notify your team. So what we're eliminating here is that manual entry, the manual routing for approval. I have clients that come to me saying that they use DocuSign for approval. Then they have like 20 different DocuSign emails that they have approved invoices, and that can get lost in your email inbox. So the efficiency here is reducing that time, because we have a system to do that entry and also automating the approvals. And also, speaking of time, so time and labor, eliminate manual paper-based tasks and allow staff to focus on more strategic objectives. The cost here is to obtain rebate incentives by paying vendors electronically and reduce processing costs without adding additional staff. So when we talk about the cost, you're saving costs because you're reducing time, but you're also saving costs on the payment network because you're no longer having to cut checks in-house, send the check through the mail. That will add up. Same with time with people doing that action. So we have a full service completing that processing for you. So let's paint a picture. So before automation, before AvidXchange, so invoices received from the vendor. It's either going to your email inbox or it's going to like a department head and they're forwarding it to AP. There's the whole manual routing of emailing to each other, or as I said, the DocuSign example. Or I've heard scenarios where clients are, they have multiple locations, multiple companies in their organization, and each organization has a different like PO box center, and they're packing up all the invoices and mailing it out to their corporate. Like that's a lot of time. So a lot of manual steps are happening today where invoices are received in different ways. The routing for approval is very manual. You're losing track of where those invoices are in the approval process. You're losing invoices in your inbox. And then your team is then still having to manually enter in the invoice in the accounting system, code it, and then approve it for payment selection, and then complete the whole process. What I want to leave with you here is after automation, there's 3 simple tasks. We're doing the receiving of the invoice. We're doing the data capture. All we need you to do is review the coding, because there's going to be automation tools for coding. Review any PO match results if you have a solution for PO matching. And then we need you to approve the invoice, and then we need you to authorize for payment. So 3 tasks. So this is how we save you time. How this all works is the system is able to centralize and receive invoices. As I mentioned, via email, we will designate an email address to your invoice portal so that your suppliers, your vendors can directly email the invoice to that email address. So that email address could be your company name at avidbill.com, just an example. And then before you use this solution, we're going to notify your vendors saying, going forward, please email invoice to this email address. We can also help receive invoices in a PO box. So we can establish a PO box just for your organization. Even though you have multiple companies in your organization, we can have one PO box, one email, and then we are going to be opening the mail and scanning the invoices into the system. So you're no longer having to do that. So just to summarize that, we are going to receive the invoices, invoice images, and scan those invoices into the system. And then we are going to do a data extraction off the invoice. And then this is where we are reducing the time, so your team is no longer having to manually create it. We've created that invoice. But then where I mentioned we leave you 3 simple steps, through automation, we have the flexible online invoice approval processes. So based on your approval process, first step could be someone that's coding, or maybe the first step someone's reviewing it. Maybe the second person's coding it, the third person's approving, then final approval. Like based on your approval process, we build that out in the system so that we can say, anytime an invoice comes in for this vendor, it goes to this department, or this AP person, or CFO if the invoice is over $50,000. So we'll define those rules based on your process today in the portal. And then going back to PO matching. So our solution has the functionality to perform either a 2-way match, which is flipping all the purchase order lines as invoice lines to the invoice, or it can perform a 3-way match where it can flip only the items that have been received against the purchase order as invoice lines. And then the solution has workflows depending on match results, which will then trigger that approval process. So all that being said, again, we receive your invoices, we air quotes digitize them and route them to the approval team. Your team, each person, even if you're just reviewing or coding or approving, you will be notified in an email from the portal saying you have 12 invoices awaiting your review. So that's when you would go into the portal. Once you complete the invoice review process, then you go into the ability to facilitate payments. So that means when you approve the invoice, the system, AvidXchange, will integrate the invoice to your accounting system, whether an API or file-based. The invoice is going to a post in your accounting system, and then you'll be able to have the ability to either make the payment in-house as you normally do, but also have the ability to send the payment to AvidPay. AvidPay Network is a full service payment network that will facilitate the payments on your behalf and have the vendor elect between the 3 different methods with us. So the vendor can choose between a check, they can choose a direct deposit, or they can choose a MasterCard. This is where I was saying earlier, we have almost 1 million vendors in our AvidPay network, so we've probably paid your vendor before. If they're new, we onboard the vendor, and then the vendor gets to choose their preferred payment method. So again, full integration, invoices and payments are going to be posted in your accounting system, but you're going to have the flexibility to process payments within or send the payments externally to our service team. Just to reiterate the invoice receiving process. So again, I mentioned this earlier, but we can receive invoices via email. That's where we will designate an email address to the portal. We can also designate a PO box. So again, with that notification we send out to your vendors, we can say, dear vendor, going forward, please email invoice to, email address at Avidbill, or mail invoice to PO Box 123 North Charlotte, North Carolina, so that we are the team doing that receiving for you. And then you also have the ability just to directly upload. When that invoice is received in the system, we're also responsible for extracting the header detail. So image of the invoice is received in the portal, then we are going to be extracting invoice number, invoice date, invoice amount, vendor, the ship to on the invoice, and then PO number on that invoice. So we're basically staging up the invoice for you, for your team to just go into the portal and complete the approval. And the approval, again, is your process, the invoice review process. So it could be reviewers, coders, approvers of that expense, someone reviewing the PO match results, but those are going to be based on your steps today. Now, invoices received in AvidXchange, as I mentioned, centralized email inbox, and then vendors can send invoices directly to the platform. Images received by 6 p.m. Eastern will be processed the same day by our data entry team. We also have an intelligence data captured powered by Microsoft. So we have the functionality to do what we all know as the hot term of OCR, which is that optical character recognition tool using technology to scan the image and capture the data. But we also have an added service at no additional cost, but it's just another set of eyes on this invoice to make sure that data is accurately captured. Because traditionally, OCR is not always 100% accurate, but because we have a human team dedicated to reviewing the capture, you're not having to make any changes between like a decimal or a comma. We're doing that review for you. So that's a win-win. Then when we talk about invoice approval, so users are notified via email daily. We have invoices that are in their approval queue waiting their action. So this is where I say, if you're the first reviewer, once you log in, those invoices are going to be in your list awaiting your action. Once you approve your step, then it goes to the next step, and then the next step, and then the next. And then when logging in, again, users have their list of invoices upon clicking one, and users will see the invoice images and the data notes about that invoice. And then users, they can approve the invoice and it'll automatically move to the next step of the approval process, or they can reject it. So if they have the permission to reject the invoice or like restart it to the previous step, they can do that. And they can always go back and view invoices from previous or the ones that have been approved or rejected with a quick view from the vendor history while they're on the invoice. Now the payments, so once payments are approved, the payment will be made. So that means vendors can choose if they want to get paid electronically through the AvidPay Direct or MasterCard, or if they prefer a check, then check payments can be their default. Full visibility is available to search for and view invoices and payments in the platform. So we have multiple platforms at AvidXchange that house the invoice automation and payment tools. But what I want to leave you here with is you're going to have, again, full visibility on invoice status and payment status at all times. Invoices default to be paid on final approval. So if there's an option for scheduling a future payment date, then it will still only be paid at the required approvals that are met. So you're in control on releasing the payment within the system. We're going to process that payment within the first day of you sending us that payment file. And the integration with, and this one specifically with Microsoft Dynamics, but we have, again, multiple integrations. So just to not focus on the accounting system here, invoice and payment data and ledger balances will import nightly through an automated API. Again, depending on your accounting system, it could be file-based, but if you, just to reiterate, if you have an accounting system like within Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central, Sage Intacct, NetSuite, QuickBooks, MRI, those are going to be those strong API engines. If there's others, we can review the integration so that we can confirm what is able to map over and be brought over from the accounting system. But with these integrations, we're bringing over your vendor master through a sync. We're bringing over your chart of accounts through a sync. We're bringing over the invoices, the purchase orders through a sync. So all of it's connected. So if it is a big system, it's going to be an API, no file transfer. But if it is a file based, then you would have to export a file to import to the accounting system. And then all reporting the company currently provides can remain the same place in your accounting system, because we're pushing all of the data from the portal back to your accounting system. So same reporting capabilities you'll have today, but you'll also have the portal to run reports as well for the same visibility. And then security FAQs. So each user has their own profile, username and password, and they set this up when we first registered the solution. There is a complete audit history as well. So every single action performed in the portal will be visible in the electronic audit trail of AvidXchange. So you'll be able to see who performed what action, who approved this invoice yesterday, who added additional comments or notes, who routed it to someone else for like a further review. So you'll have all that for audit purposes. And the other security factor here is there's an option of setting up a multi-factor authentication for login verifications, like a 2, a 3, or 4-way, as well as data access verification via SMS. Well, I hope that what I shared with you was, I know it's high level reviewing and automation and the market trends today, but I hope what I share with you was beneficial. And I'm a part of the solutions team, so happy to, hop on a call, do a full product demonstration with you, but happy that we're here to learn. So let's now go to the Q&A, Angie.
Okay. One of our first questions that we have is, what does implementation look like, and what is the cost associated?
Yeah, so implementation, depending on the size of your organization, if you're one company, we can handle. Of course, we can handle. If you're multiple companies, we can handle. So no matter the size of your organization, we're going to scope out the project and give you the realistic timelines. What we typically see with implementation timelines is within 45 to 60 days, we'll be able to configure the platform and integration and train you. And the implementation consists of about 4 different milestone calls. Like the first call is going to be the kickoff call, where our project team is going to meet with your project team, and we're going to introduce ourselves. We're going to talk about the scope of the project. We're going to learn about what your approval processes are. We're going to build them out so that we can then on the next call configure the portal together. We're going to train you on how to create approval workflows, how to tie a workflow to a company profile or vendor profile, as well as do some training on how to review and approve an invoice, and also go into the integration training, how to bring over an invoice through a sync or a file export. So the first call, kickoff. The second call is going to be that configuration and training. The third call is going to be the testing. Like, let's do a whole day in a life. Let's take an invoice, let's review it, approve it, code it, PO match it, and then let's send it to the accounting system. And let's also test the payment. So we'll do a full testing. And then the next call is go live. You're ready to go. So let's pretend we'll crunch all those milestones in 4 weeks. We could do it that quickly, or we spread it out. Maybe you want to pace yourselves, and we're just going to go with your speed. So that's kind of like the project team, the responsibilities, and the timeline there. The costs associated, I'm not a salesperson, so I can't give you costs, but I will say the structure is in a few different ways. So there's an implementation fee, which is reasonable and it's not ridiculous. There's also the cost per, so when you use the system, you first pay for the implementation, but then as you're using the system, it's kind of like you pay as you go. We charge you per transaction, so per invoice we charge you. Same with per payment we charge you. And then there's also like a monthly payment subscription for our services. So that's the cost in general. And pausing here because I can't share any numbers because I don't know. But any other questions?
Okay, thank you. And we have another question. How can automation support our audit process?
I love this question because this one's near and dear to my heart. I came from a paper heavy environment, actually in like textiles manufacturing, and audit was a nightmare. I had to go back to file cabinets and search my emails and find images, you know, in an email, or look through the file cabinet and find the stapled image, you know, in the cabinet. So all that goes away with automation. And the way we can support the audit process is because your portal is housing the images. It's housing the audit trail of the approvals and every action performed. And so when it comes to a random audit or it's audit season, our clients sometimes give their auditors like a read-only access to the portal, and then they can go in and like search for invoices or payments and run a report. Maybe they only want to run a report of they need an invoice image for this vendor on March 2022, so they can run that. So we can support you tremendously on the audit, and I speak of this with so much enthusiasm because I came from that environment, and automation is key for this as well. So great question.
Okay, thank you. And another question that we have is, what does an average profile look like for a solution like this? Who would be a good fit?
Great question. So anyone can be a good fit. I mean, we support clients in many different industries like nonprofit, healthcare, education, manufacturing, retail, distribution, restaurant, hotel, you name it. So we can support a single entity organization. We can support a multi-entity organization. Basically, any organization that has troubles in, you know, how much time they're spending in receiving invoices and entering invoice data, we can solve for that. Or how much time they're spending on check runs, or how much money they're spending on checks pre-printed or stamps, we can solve for that. So really, everyone is a good fit if you need help in automating your accounts payable. So again, it can be as small as one organization. It can be as big as hundreds of different companies within the organization as well.
All right, thank you very much, Natalia. I believe those are all the questions that we have today. If anybody has any additional questions, please feel free to contact us or your account manager here at Innovia Consulting, and we would be more than happy to further the discussion. So I just want to thank Natalia for the presentation today. And if you're watching on demand, thank you for taking the time to watch this. And if you're attending today, thank you for taking some time out of your busy day to join. And just to let you know about some more of our upcoming events, you can check out our site at innovia.com/events. And you can also check out our training workshop page at innovia.com/workshops. We have a variety of workshops to fit your role, so check out the ones that are right for you and your team. And if you have not heard our Innovia Conversation podcast yet, we have a whole library of podcast episodes for you to listen to, and you can learn more about those on our podcast page at innovia.com/podcast. Also subscribe while you're on the page so you'll get notified when those new episodes air. And we do have some exciting news about our conferences in 2023. Visit our conference page at innovia.com/conferences to learn more. Our customer conference information is up now, so you can go ahead and register for that and read all the details, as well as the Dynamics Con conference coming up in May of 2023. Well, again, thank you, Natalia, for the presentation, and for everybody on our webinar today. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you soon at another Innovia webinar. Take care, everyone. Thanks, Natalia.
Thank you.